careful of it. But speaking of fraudsters, we've got George Santos. George Santos from New York, House Representative, just got a scathing ethics committee report that found substantial evidence that he broke the law. He's also on several indictments. He's looking at doing time in prison. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
But the ethics committee found that he committed fraud, and it's obvious and blatant, and it's funnier than shit. You're going to love this, Lacey. This is a representative from your state.
The House Ethics Committee just released its report on indicted Congressman George Santos. And the big headline from this report, as we're still going through it, they say that there is substantial evidence that Santos violated federal laws. Let's get right to NBC's Julie Sirkin now on Capitol Hill for us. Julie, what else are you reading in this report?
Well, look, this is the work of the committee that has been poring over this topic, investigating Santos, and now we have this report just in a couple of minutes ago. They say that Santos blatantly stole from his campaign, spending campaign funds, according to this report, which we are just going through now, on things like Botox, lavish trips to Atlantic City, on OnlyFans, on designer goods. I mean, really everything under the sun. He misappropriated official campaign funds, again, that was supposed to go...
Wait. So, we're talking Botox and porn?
Yep. And lavish trips to Atlantic City. I don't know that I would call a trip to Atlantic City lavish. But...
Well, I mean, maybe the way he was doing it was lavish.
I don't know.
I mean, you don't know how he was, you know?
At the strip club.
I mean, I wouldn't call it lavish, like, you know, in a general sense, but you don't know how he was doing it, so maybe.
But Botox, man.
Botox and porn, like, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you embezzled money for that shit. It's just hilarious. But this is the guy that also stole money from a homeless vet who needed the money to treat his dog's cancer, remember?
Right.
This is the guy that stole a scarf, like a really expensive Burberry scarf from his roommate, and then he wore it on television at a Stop the Steal rally while he was wearing a stolen scarf. It was...
I mean, like...
And then he went home and he watched that he jerked off some OnlyFans on his, and he paid for it
with embezzled money.
With his embezzled money from his donors.
I mean, while he was at it, he could have at least bought a damn scarf and let his roommate keep his scarf.
Yeah. I don't have a ton else to add to this other. It's just so fucking funny. Oh man.
I mean, I don't even know. It's like it just keeps getting weirder, and his story keeps getting weirder. I feel like it's got to be done now, but I almost half expect 2 to 3 weeks from now we'll be up here and be like, hey, you know what this weirdo is done now? You know? Oh,
you know, sorry, as an ex-cop, I've arrested guys like that where they're career criminals. I mean, you go through their rap sheet and it's a mile long. I mean, it's like every...
You know what? Now, though, I mean, some of these criminals are just idiots, but a number of them are really highly intelligent, and if they would just funnel their intelligence into something, like, useful and productive, you think about what they could do, you know?
Yeah, I think George Santos is just a sociopath. I don't think it registers to him. I think he knows what he's doing is wrong. Maybe. He knows what he's doing is wrong, and he wants to get away with it, but there's no empathetic nothing going on with this guy. It's, if I can get away with it, it's fine. Right. And now he's all upset because, you know, and he's not going to run again for re-election. Because A, it's so humiliating at this point. And B, he's looking at...
Sometimes people like that. I mean, geez, look at Trump. He thinks his shit don't stink. So, I mean, sometimes people act like that. We're all embarrassed on their behalf, but they're like, what? what's the problem? So like,
Well,
nothing surprises me in that arena anymore.
Yeah, well, they don't like being looked down upon. That's what I mean. Maybe
Sure.
embarrassed was the wrong word. More of, they don't feel guilt about it. They're just upset that they're being made fun of.
Yeah.
But
right.
dude, when you're stealing money from your campaign to masturbate on OnlyFans, you're kind of begging for it. But since you brought up Trump,
it's true.
Yeah, it's true. But since you brought up Trump, we've discussed this before. So Syndey Powell and Jenna Ellis, who were previous lawyers, and Kenneth Chesborough all flipped on him a couple weeks ago, and they made deals and pled guilty. And remember, they got great deals. They got misdemeanors, and they didn't get any jail time. They just got probation and some fines, right? And we talked about that. Well, to get a deal like that, because they're looking at serious felonies, right, for the January 6th thing. To get a deal like that, you have to do what's called a proffer agreement, which means you have to go in and basically cough up everything you know before the DA signs the deal. Well, somebody leaked some of the video from the proffer agreement. So we got some of that. We'll show it to you. It was actually one of the defendants, one of Trump's co-defendants. Her lawyer leaked it, and he admitted to it. But and he shouldn't have done that. But this is, at least we get to see some of this. So you can kind of see behind the curtain here what these sort of proffer agreements look like. This is what happens behind closed doors in these kinds of cases. I think it's really fascinating to show people.
Okay.
So this is this is Jenna Ellis, and this is from her proffer agreement. Her basically having to cough up everything she knows.
At the time period where they were going to start to discuss, what was Dan Scavino's role?
At the time, I believe his title was social media director for the White House. It became deputy chief of staff at the time that the conversation in question took place.
Okay, and when was that?
The conversation was around December 19th of 2020 at the White House Christmas party. And I emphasized to him, I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over, because he said to me, and I kind of excited to him, well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
Okay, so that, we'll get into Syndey Powell's in a second, but that is incredibly damning.
Oh, geez. And terrifying.
Yeah, but it shows intent. They intended to overthrow the election. They intended to overthrow the Democratic election and just stay. And they knew what they were doing was wrong. Now, granted, it's coming from Scavino. It's hearsay about what Trump said. But still, I mean, it's still pretty damning. But it shows you what everybody knows. But now Scavino is really fucked. Because they got him basically saying, we plotted this. And I was a part of it. Now, here's Syndey Powell. She tries to sort of thread the needle here a little bit, where she still wants to be a loyalist kind of thing, but at the same time, she's a nut bar. And we'll go through this because some of this, where she talks about evidence, is just psychotic stuff. But she is out there.
Ms. Powell, were you ever around when anyone told Donald Trump that he had lost the election?
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Pat Cipollone, Eric Hirschman, Derek Lyons all thought he'd lost.
So all of his lawyers are telling him, you lost. So he knew. He can't say he didn't know.
Was that in the December 18th meeting?
Yes.
What was President Trump's reaction when, I guess, this cadre of advisors would say you lost?
It was like, they would say that and then they'd walk out and he'd go, see, this is what I deal with all the time. He was specifically willing to appoint me special counsel. In fact, he looked over at Cipollone 3 different times and said, do I have the authority to name for special counsel? And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then somebody said, well, she doesn't have a security clearance. So he looked at Cipollone and he said, do I have the authority to give her a security clearance? And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then about the third time we went through that scenario, Cipollone, I think, said, you can name her anything you want, Mr. President, and nobody's going to pay a bit of attention to it.
So real quick, so this is Brian Tyler Cohen that we stole those clips from, but no, the president cannot name a special counsel. That is the attorney general's job. The only time an attorney general couldn't name a special counsel, and Congress would have to do it, is if he's the one being investigated or she's the one being investigated. But anything else, the attorney general appoints special counsel. The reason the president doesn't do it is because you don't want it to be politically biased if you're going to avoid it. And the attorney general doesn't have those is not a politician. They're an appointed administrator of the executive branch. Right. So basically they're plotting we're just going to make her a special counsel to go after Biden or whoever just because we can, even though it's not lawful or practical. But this is terrible. So it did cause, Fonnie Willis was worried about, because this was her deal for the RICO case.
Okay.
So she was the one who got these proffer agreements. She was upset because she's afraid that they might try to do a mistrial because this information leaked. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. She did jump on this pretty quick. But the thing about it is now if you're one of the other defendants who hasn't pled guilty yet, you know that they have enough. And right now they're probably sitting with their lawyers and their lawyers are telling them, maybe it's time to cut a deal. I would, after seeing that, if I was representing any of them, I'd be like, now's the time to cut it. You're a small fish. Let's get probation, slap on the wrist, and get the fuck out of here.
Right.
Just testify and get the fuck out. But
time to sing like a canary.
Yep. That time has come. The walrus said. Anyway, so that was really damning stuff.
You think they will?
I think we will. I think a lot of times with like these RICO cases where you have this many, once the first domino falls, a lot of them do. And honestly, the DA, she doesn't give a shit about the small fish. She wants Trump. She wants Giuliani. She wants the guys at the top. She doesn't care about the smaller people, right? But it's going to come down to, right now, it's a race to who can get the deal first, because she's going to get to a point where she's got enough that she's going to be like, why should I offer you a deal? What do you have to offer me? Nothing.
Right. What can you give me?
Right. To make me want to cut a deal and go easy on you. So there's that going on. But you see a lot of these RICO trials where like this one, 19 defendants, or you see them like they have 13 or 14 defendants. And by the end, it's 1 or 2 defendants. And everybody else is pled guilty and pled out. And thrown the boss under the bus, which is kind of what they're doing. Which is how these things go. And I bet you that's what happens. I bet you by the time this thing goes to trial sometime next year, probably summer of next year, right? Maybe fall. I bet you it's just Trump and maybe Giuliani and maybe one other person. And everybody else is pled out. I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, actually.
Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if Trump pleads out, because if he gets the January 6th case, the federal case is coming in March. And the judge on that one, Chutkin, she has not broken at all. She's saying, no, we're keeping the trial date. They keep trying to delay. And she keeps saying, fine, you can have an extra week to turn this in or that in, but the trial date stays the same, which I think is March 6th. And that trial, I mean, I've heard different things where it's like, well, some people say it could go 6 to 8 months. A lot of the attorneys I've talked to, they're like, for a trial like that, probably goes maybe 6 to 8 weeks. You know, it's March.
So it's not going to be an OJ, huh?
No, they're like, if it starts in March, the beginning of March, it's over by May, maybe June at the latest. You know, well, because it's not a murder trial, and there's only one defendant, which is Trump, which was the whole point. This is why Jack Smith hasn't. They have all the unindicted co-conspirators. He hasn't indicted anybody else because he doesn't want to bog it down. Let's just go right after the big fish, and that's it, and make it quick. Because Jack Smith wants to get a resolution to this, one way or the other, win or lose, before the election. Why? Because the American people need to know about this if they're voting for a president who essentially committed treason.
Right.
We should know that before we vote on it. Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of things about their lives I don't think we need to know. Treason feels like one we do need to know. Just saying.
Treason's up there. It's up there. It's one of the worst crimes you can commit.
When you sleep with, I don't care, treason. Yeah, I care. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, I got a special present